Welcome to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today we'll be speaking with Jim Nicholson about tea. Jim is a certified Tea Sommelier. Now, I know many of you are familiar with wine sommeliers, as I am, but yes, Jim is a Tea Sommelier. This means that Jim not only loves teas, but he is certified to tell you all about tea. And so I think we should all grab a cup of what is the world's favorite beverage, tea. And while we have our cup of tea, we'll listen to Jim tell us about the origins of tea, which teas are which, and how you could make the best cup of tea imaginable. That's Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and this is tea. If you had to say, what is one beverage that makes you feel comfortable or that symbolizes comfort and warmth? People always say tea. They don't say hot chocolate.
No.
When they're kids, they may say hot cocoa.
Right.
But it's tea. Tea. So
yeah, we're actually going to start with a Japanese sencha. Only
now,
because,
does sencha come from a tree as well?
Yes, it's the exact same as the Chinese plant. And so they grow the bushes. And if you ever go to a tea plantation, I talked about the tall tea trees. If they grow wild, they grow very tall.
Right.
But in a commercial setting, what they do is they keep them they look like a hedge. So it's miles and miles of these long hedges. And they're about waist height.
Okay, because that makes it easy to pick.
Because they have to pick them, yes. And it was all hand-picked in the past. Since the Second World War, they've got into mechanical harvesting of the tea. But
how would you do that if it's a leaf? Like shake the heck out of the tree? Or?
Well, if they were going to do the tree, they have to climb up there, and they have a picking basket on the back.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so what they basically keep the hedges, what they call the plucking, tea is plucked, not really cut or picked.
Okay, yes, that's true.
And so the plucking table is about 3 feet off the ground, or a little bit less, depending on the size of the people in the area that that pluck the tea. And they have baskets or sacks on their back, and they can be plastic or they can be woven. And they want the tea plucking table to be below the back of the basket. So when they're moving through these narrow rows between the hedges, they don't get stuck with their backpack. So like the back
makes sense.
Picking basket. So because they're just long, they can go for miles, these rows of hedges. And they're just like the hedge in front of your house. You know, you can, if you want to go out there and pluck each leaf off, you'd be welcome to do it.
Yeah, it might take you all day.
Yeah, it's very meticulous work.
And labor-intensive, I imagine.
It's very labor-intensive, and it was mostly women that, it was a job that the women did, was when the harvest starts in April, they go out into the fields and they pick the tea leaves, and they get paid by each basket on their back that they fill up, or bag or sack. So that's how they're paid. They often live, because in many countries, like I mentioned, Camellia sinensis grows in the mountains. It's in isolated areas. So these villagers actually live on the tea plantation. So they'll have schools. I visited one down in Argentina where it was like out in the middle of nowhere in Corrientes province. But it was the most beautiful place on earth. They had ponds with beautiful swans and tropical animals that I forget the names of. And on the plantation itself was a village, and the people had like bungalows like we have.
Wow!
This family started in the early 1900s, the Navarres family. And they built this place called Los Marias, and it's 1,000 miles from Buenos Aires, and
far.
It's out in the jungly flatlands of the northeast of Argentina. So it would be like going north of northern Ontario and putting up a tea garden. So the people have to be self-sufficient. So they created a village, and there's playgrounds, there's schools, there's a hospital, there's a trade college, the tea factory, a yerba mate, which is a herb that's they drink a lot down in South America, all on site.
Wow.
Plus the houses of the owners, and I stayed in actually the hacienda, which was the grandparents who built this Spanish hacienda, and it was just the most beautiful old Spanish house, and it had guest rooms because people that come to visit have no place to stay. There's no hotels or motels, so they had actually like a a little motel that went out into a courtyard out the back, and there was grape leaves growing, and it was just a beautiful place.
Wow, sounds fantastic.
Ever in Argentina, go see Los Marias. It's beautiful. And they grow tea and they grow yerba mate. In Argentina, tea grows at one time of the year, and yerba mate grows at the other time of the year. So they have two crops that they can rely on for their income. So they switch over at a point in time over to yerba mate and then trim it all back and make the yerba mate you'll find in the tea shops. And I actually have a gourd here, and I actually used to belong to the Stouffville Rotary Club, and we went to Brazil. And I bought myself a drinking gourd, and there's a silver straw with a little basket filter on the end to keep the yerba mate is a highly caffeinated beverage.
Okay.
Everybody down there drinks it instead of coffee almost, like even though there's good coffee in South America, they're addicted to this stuff. And they sit there all day drinking from their gourd and their silver straw with their yerba mate ground, very fine powder, grind up. And it's a traditional drink down in South America.
Okay.
So that's a little bit
the
about...
people in South America walk around being really caffeinating, bugged out all day?
Yeah. It's funny. You go through border guards and they're sitting there with their little cup, just like we'd have a styrofoam of Starbucks or something. They're sitting there with their gourd and when I was in Argentina, when we traveled with the owner of Las Marias, he would they have all these modern thermoses and bombillas, which is what they call the straws in that. And he would make this in the car while he was driving.
Really?
And he would just scare the wits out of us because it's countryside, so it's open 2-lane highway, and he'd be doing like 160. And he would be making the yerba mate because it's a very social drink that you have to share with everybody.
Yes.
So there'd be 4 or 5 of us in the car, and he would be driving along, making the yerba, because the person that makes it then serves it. That's part of the tradition.
And he's driving at the same time.
He's driving and he's talking on his cell phone. And I said, Bobby, you're scaring me. And he goes, oh, don't worry. My father used to smoke a cigarette at the same time as doing all this. So this is, and even at the airport, they actually have big thermos machines full of yerba mate. So it's really a different beverage. And this brings me into the difference between tea and what we consider tea in a lot of instances.
Right.
Tea has to come from those 3 bushes that I talked about, the Camellia sinensis, Camellia sinensis assamica, or the Camellia sinensis Cambodi. To be a real tea, it has to have that leaf in it. So a jasmine tea, yes. Jasmine and that tea leaf are put together to make jasmine tea.
Okay.
Yerba mate is a herbal drink, so it should be called a herbal infusion, not a mate tea. Even though if you go to the tea shops, they'll make you a mate tea. Okay. So this is just sommelier stuff, and it's...
Well, yeah, it's a good definition thereof, because when you go into the tea shops now, there's 100 million teas to choose from. In Europe, they have walls with glass canisters of every imaginable concoction that you could ever think of. Mm-hmm. You can get creme brulee tea, but it's not really tea. It's an herbal tincture, or
it's an infusion, or a tisane is what we usually call tisane.
Okay. That's a nice word.
Yeah,
like Shazam.
Yeah, Shazam is tisane. Yeah. So I have friends that are bringing in a tea called what they call tea is buckwheat. So this Mountain Zen company we don't have buckwheat tea that we see around here, so they're bringing in buckwheat tea, and it's not really buckwheat tea. It's buckwheat tisane. Right. Or it could be called a herbal infusion if it was more herbs. So there's flavored teas such as jasmine, chrysanthemum, Earl Grey, which is a lemon that is put in with the tea
I'm not
leaves.
a big Earl Grey fan.
Yeah. Or there's...
but Earl Grey is still a tea.
Yes, because it has the tea leaf in it.
Tea leaf, okay.
The black tea leaf, and then they put the bergamot oils in it.
Now what about a rooibos?
Rooibos is a tisane.
It's a tisane, it's not a tea.
Yeah,
now, it's all decaf, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes. It's a plant from South Africa.
Oh, okay.
And it's only grown in South Africa, nowhere else on Earth. So they have a monopoly on rooibos.
Yeah.
It means red bush, and
Right.
and it was imbibed by the local natives, and then the South Africans noticed this and tasted it and said, "Hey, this is not bad." So they now market this rooibos, or another variation of it's called honeybush, which
Right.
grows in another area, and it's a little lighter, sweeter than the rooibos.
Okay, but a white tea.
A white
Is it
tea
white?
is really, it's a very light tea, and it steeps very lightly. Now, this one here is a white peony that we're going to taste this morning, and it has, there's two types. There's a yin zen, which is a white tea, which is only the tea grows off on the stem with 2 leaves and a bud.
Okay.
And that's the perfect plucking. That's the traditional plucking that the girls that go out in the field would snap off 2 leaves and a bud. The bud is the unfurled tea leaf, the newest one coming up. So they just snap that off. Now, to make yin zen, a white tea that's pretty pricey, they just take off the bud at the end. And it looks silvery, and it has what they call peko. We call it pico, but here goes the sommelier stuff again. It's actually peko. It comes from a Chinese word meaning baby hair. So it's this tiny little hairs on the new leaf. So that now peko, when it's used with black teas, is a leaf size. So there's orange peko, which is large, peko, which is a medium size, and then there's other variations of the peko plant, or pico as we call it here. I was going to make a Japanese tea first because there's 2 things that'll ruin your tea. So
You don't want that to happen.
Okay.
not having enough tea leaf, or having too much, because then you get it too strong. So a teaspoon worked just fine for 1 cup of tea.
Okay.
So we'll start with a Japanese sencha, which is a green tea. They're a little bit different than a Chinese tea, because the difference in Japanese and Chinese is that the Chinese roast their tea over open flames in, it used to be woks, now they're done by machines. The Japanese steam their tea. Why they do that is because the tea, to get it from white to pu'er, you let it oxidize. Some people call it fermentation, but it's not.
Okay.
Fermentation creates alcohol, and tea is not fermented
Alcohol.
like beer.
Right.
So there's a few
Although,
terms.
sounds like that could be a good invention, but we'll talk about that one later.
Yeah, actually the pu'er I talked about does create alcohol in the processing of it, but regular teas don't. So they, to kill off the enzyme, so with white tea we just put it out on a big sheet or a floor in the sun, and it withers, because what you want is you pick your tea leaf, it's quite moist. And you don't want that moisture in the leaf. You want to get the moisture out. So what you do is you wither it. And that lets it sit in the sun until it draws back to about 30% the water content.
Okay.
And then it's getting into a point where it actually makes good tea.
Oh.
With white tea, we don't do anything else with it but heat it to kill off the enzyme action, because what happens is the tea leaf dies. It's like when you cut a piece of apple. It starts to go dark. Because there's an enzyme action and it's starting to rot.
Right.
So what we want and how we create teas is by this enzymatic action over time.
Okay.
So it's called oxidization. So with white tea, we just wither it and then we heat it so there's no more enzyme action, and it just stops. And it creates this very mild, tasty white tea. And some people think it has less caffeine, which could be the case, because it's not broken like what I'll talk about the other teas. We have to break them and let the caffeine come out in them. Now, some people say that there's a big argument, and I don't know why the scientific truth isn't there, but they say that ones that are just tips, the yin zen, actually have all the nutrients coming up through the tea bush to it, because it's the newest baby on the block. So it's being nourished more than any of the other ones, so it grows.
Right.
So some people say, well, it has all the caffeine in it because it's going up through the tea plant and into this leaf. So anyways, that's an argument. I haven't read the definitive answer on that, but some people promote the fact that white tea has less caffeine in it because it's less processed.
Okay.
The Japanese tea is steamed, and that's why it tastes different. But the simple fact is, the steaming gives it a different flavor. If you taste Chinese teas, green teas, they taste vegetal. So some people compare it to asparagus or broccoli or green vegetables. Mm-hmm. The Japanese tea... That's
the sound of the kettle getting ready to boil. Just saying. Okay, that's fine. Leave it.
Okay. I have a kettle here. As I mentioned, the temperature of the water can destroy your tea. So with a Japanese tea, because it's steamed, it's less robust than a Chinese tea, which has been roasted. So what we want to do is we want to take a teaspoon of the Japanese sencha, which is usually... Is it a teaspoon
per cup or a teaspoon per
couple
of cups?
Now, cups are, as you can see in front of me, I have the Chinese cups.
Chinese cups are small.
These are 2 or 3 ounces.
Yes. Okay, so when we refer to cups, we're thinking more of a British teacup, a Royal Doulton kind of a deal, and a Chinese teacup, as opposed to a North American mug, which we're talking 8 ounces plus.
Exactly. So yes, the teacup, the Chinese drink small ones. Some of them look like the ones that you would use in a dollhouse even. For the pu'er teas and some of those teas, they drink out of one that's just... Tiny. It's half a shot glass.
Really? Which is good, because if it does taste like dirt, you don't
want to get it over the fast.
I thought it was so you could smell it better and you could taste it.
That works too.
Okay. Today I'm just going to use a teaspoon for our 3 little Chinese cups that we're going to imbibe from.
Okay.
Yes. And goes over there, get these things. So we need to use very warm water for Japanese teas. And if you're disliking Japanese teas, it's probably because you've boiled the water. Okay. It's too hot and it scalds the tea because they're delicate from the steaming process. So always work with about 160 or 60 degrees Celsius, 160 Fahrenheit with your Japanese teas.
Now, when you see that in a glass kettle, does it have a little bit of bubble in it or no bubbles at all?
Yes, 160. Now, the Chinese didn't have a nice little tea kettle like I have, which has all the different tea styles. You just press a button, and if I want oolong, I get oolong. If I press green, I get green, the right temperature. They used to use a system that was quite interesting. When the bubbles first form, they're very small, and they used to call that shrimp eyes. So when they were looking at their kettles and they saw these little tiny bubbles, it was shrimp eyes, and it would be perfect for our Japanese teas or our lighter, delicate teas.
Okay.
Now, what I'm going to do is, we're at shrimp eyes right now. I just poured it into a gaiwan. A gaiwan is the normal steeping cup of for the Chinese gong fu service. So in front of me, I have a bamboo drainer. And what I need to do is I need to pour some water over my gaiwan to heat it up, because we don't want the temperatures to change. We put a little bit in each of the cups.
Now, see, my mom's British background, and she does that with her teacups to this day, and the teapot.
Yes.
She warms the pot, and she warms the cups before she pours the tea in.
Because as soon as you pour the tea, it's going to get... it's going to change the temperature, and you want your tea to stay, especially with these lighter ones that are at 160 or 60 degrees Celsius. You want to make sure that the water and the cup are the same temperature, or they cool down too fast. So this is why the tea drainer is nice, and I brought that today for the first time we're using it. So for your show,
wow,
we're going to use it.
That's really nice.
Very nice.
So I'll just pour it, and that way you can slop all over the place and you don't get your table wet.
Right, so that's make a mess and you don't have to worry.
Now the timing is important. So about 1 minute for 1 to 2 minutes for the sencha, and so the right amount of tea, the right water temperature, and the time is important in making a good cup of tea.
Okay.
So if you come from Scottish background like I did, people used to throw the tea on the stove and let it boil all day long, and then they'd throw in more tea bags or more loose tea. And you had this strong tea, and the reason why most youth don't like
because it's really bitter.
Is because it was strong at their grandmother's house. I was if there had been people calling in, I would have said, tell me your stories about your first instance of tea. I bet most of it would have been I was at my grandmother's house, and she made this tea, and it was like horrible. Like I had to put lots of sugar and milk in it.
That's people do put a lot of sugar and milk in that because it's so strong.
Changing the flavors.
Okay. So you're putting on a water now that I saw you stick your fingers in there, so that's not that hot.
No, this is you can actually feel
warm.
the cup. Okay. You will burn your fingers on these cups when I get to the black teas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're going to go up to
but
boil.
these ones are just nice and warm.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to just pour the water out of these cups now that they're just nicely
warmed.
Okay. And I'm going to... And this gets harder with black teas because they get hot, and then this ceramic gaiwan that I'm using, or porcelain gaiwan, is...
really hot.
Gets really hot, but right now it's not bad. So we'll just pour off a little bit of Japanese tea here.
Now that doesn't have a spout. You're actually blocking the leaves from going into the cup by putting a lid on it, sort of the way I do pasta sometimes.
Yeah, just so I'll just have a cloth beside me because we've got water all over the top of our tea drainer, and you can taste.
Okay, now what is the timer on that you had there?
The little timer, this is one that I bought from one of the tea shops.
Nice.
Yeah, very good.
And it allows me to actually time, as my kettle will, I can pick the temperature of the water. That's right for the type of tea I'm drinking.
Right.
My timer also has 1 minute for green, 2 minutes for white, 3 for black.
Those are steeping times then.
Steeping times. So you just press the button and it
say,
automatically. We do get a little lazy. I do have one that's like a sand dial type of one.
Isn't that cute? It's a little hourglass.
3 little hourglasses. There's
and the
1 minute,
colors are
3
green,
minutes, and 5
brown,
minutes.
and red. Isn't that cute?
And I can turn that over, and when the sand comes through,
then you know
it'll tell me the tea is ready.
Wow.
Isn't that... You know what? That would make a really cool little gift for someone. If you know somebody who's just getting into teas and things, some of these gadgets that you're kind of laughing at because they're all kind of funny, they're really cute. If you don't know, obviously you probably don't need these anymore. You know when your tea has steeped because you do this all the time.
Yes.
So you can tell by the color and all the rest of it if it's ready to go. But for someone who's just starting out, you need to have it timed because I'm the type of person who loses track of time. I yak and I don't know what time it is.
Right.
So I'll have to look at the timer, and I would prefer not to have the hourglass one because it doesn't beep. I would need one that goes,
sometimes
time to drink it.
I have a couple of these ones from the tea shops, but I also have ones that are just like cooking timers. So you just turn the dial for 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, 5 minutes if it's a black tea. And
this is really nice.
Yeah.
What are we drinking again? Just so our listeners know.
Japanese sencha. Now this is the common grade of Japanese tea that most restaurants would serve. There's one called gyokuro, which is the same leaf, but in the last couple of weeks before the harvest, they covered it. They used to cover it with bamboo. Now they do it with tarps, and it keeps out the sunlight. And that creates a more chlorophyll development in the tea leaf. Mm-hmm. So the gyokuro tea is the finer quality. The matcha teas that you see are often made from the same leaf as the... let's keep these separate so we don't drink each other's tea.
That's really nice.
Yeah, so the gyokuro is often ground into the matcha tea. They call it tencha, which is because once it's powdered, it doesn't last very long. And I do have a little tin.
Oh, yes. I've seen those powdered teas.
Yeah, I have a tin of it over here. And it's a green powder. It's another thing that if you grind, if you make it, and I'm going to make
it's very
some later.
Powdery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very, very light green powder. You can actually see some on the packaging even, and it's floating in the air around us.
It's very light.
So what that is it's a tea leaf that has been ground for an hour on a stone grinder. They used to do it by hand. Some of the better ones still are done by hand. And these are used in the Japanese tea ceremonies. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're doing a Gong Fu Chinese ceremony with my draining board, my gaiwan, and my Chinese cups. So this is how they would serve tea in China. This would be their tea ceremony. In Japan, they took this to an art form. It's called...
As the Japanese often do.
Yeah, that's the way they express themselves.
Culturally, that's...
Yes,
right.
It's called Shanayu. Mm-hmm. It means a tea ceremony. Gong Fu comes from Kung Fu, which means hand, and like all the teas are served by hand type of thing.
Right.
In the matcha ceremonies, and then there's a sencha ceremony, so the tea we drank is also done. It's a little like the afternoon tea versus high tea.
Right.
It's the sencha one is less formal.
Okay.
But the matcha one, the Shanao Yu, was started about 1500, I think, and the shoguns and the Buddhist priests, the Zen monks, kind of created this tea ceremony, and it's very, very ritualistic. You have to go to school and become a master in serving these Shana Use things. And it's where the tea house comes from. They used to, in their back garden, build this tiny little thing like a closet, like almost like a shed out the back, which was the tea house. And then what they did was a Zen garden would come up, and each stone would be placed on the route to take you through the garden, and you would stop and you would contemplate. So you would start to meditate your way into the tea house. And so
Isn't that neat?
Yes, it was
That's a neat concept, yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ceremony. I've been to a couple of them, and what happened there is shoguns were like the guys that you didn't lip off to, like they'd chop your head off in a minute.
Yeah, it's okay.
And but when they came to the tea house, they became the same as everybody else. So you could have usually 5 or 6 people could fit in a tea house. And the host or hostess would be the one that would host this little tea party. And the shoguns would have to take off their swords and leave them outside. And the door was only a couple of feet off the ground. So everybody had to get down and kind of bow their way in, which meant they all became equal in size.
Nice?
So the shogun versus the peasant that might be there, or the farmer or something, would all be equal as they came into the tea house. And inside the tea house, they'd have a painting hanging and maybe some flowers or a sculpture, and you were to sit and contemplate that. And you don't really get into conversation in a Japanese tea house. It's all quiet. It's all meditative. It's all very Zen. And then the hostess leading the ceremony would have certain pots, certain cloths, certain pouring ladles, and there would be a systematic way of going through the serving of these teas to people. And that would take 4 to 6 hours, 2 to 4 hours.
Wow.
To serve this tea.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And sometimes in the middle of it, they would change the painting or the flowers. So it's very, very fascinating. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know that it was a very fascinating ceremony too. I didn't get to go to the tea house. We just did it in a tea shop where a Japanese friend of mine who's been educated. And they still do this at home. The women especially put on their kimonos, and they all dressed up, and they have a little spot in their house where the women go and they sit, and one serves the tea in this manner. So they're taught as children all the way up to adults.
That sounds very soothing.
Nice to keep that
Again,
tradition,
the comfort food.
You're listening to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Remember, if you'd like to hear this show again, you can check out our YouTube channel at Freshwaves Radio. Now let's get back to the show.
Now we're going to a green tea. And green tea, of course, is super trendy right now.
It is.
And I imagine that within the green tea realm, there's variations of green tea as well, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. There's probably several thousand types of green tea.
Wow.
And it's all done by the way they process it. So the white tea was very little processed. It was just allowed to wilt, basically.
Right.
And then they stop the action and package it, sell it to you. The yellow tea we talked about goes up one more step where they wrap it in humid cloths for a while, and that causes it to have a more orange or yellowish color to it.
Right.
The green tea is more processed again now. So we've wilted it in the withering process. Then we've basically rolled it. So the leaf is put into these machines that roll it. In the old days, they used to do it by hand, but now it's all done mechanically, of course. And then that breaks the leaf. So all these things that are trapped inside, like the caffeines, the polyphenols, the vitamins, the minerals, and that's why people think of it as a health beverage, the green tea, because it has all the products have been broken and let out of the leaf veins and the leaf membranes. So that's one of the reasons why they've kind of gone over to the green teas, as well as good marketing. Green teas are very common, available. There's multiple hundreds, thousands of different varieties of them.
And you tend not to use the milk and sugar, so from a health point of view, the industry likes that.
Yes, that's right.
Selling point right there. Yeah.
Now, this is what they call cut, tear, and curled leaf. So it's going to have a lot more leaf inside of it. Instead of being big leaves, it's been chopped back. This was a green tea I brought back from Argentina. And
yeah, when you think of green tea, I think more Chinese. I'm not thinking Argentina.
Yes, but there's I think there's something around 100 different countries in the world that actually grow tea. This I didn't pour very good, but you'll get a taste of it anyways.
That's okay.
Don't worry about the leaf. If you get a bit of it, it's just extra nutrition.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
And
it's always good.
Extra nutrition's always good.
We usually, when we're tasting teas, only sip them anyways, and then we spit it out, just like a wine sommelier would do.
Oh, really?
So when I used to do tea tastings for one of the tea companies, I'd line up 30 different black teas. Now, if I drank 30 black teas, I'd be so wired I wouldn't be able to stand on the floor anymore.
You'd be bouncing out the front of the door.
What we would have to do is we'd sip them and spit them. So we're only looking for the flavor profile to see whether we like it and whether it would be sellable to a commercial iced tea maker or somebody like that. Mm-hmm. So we're getting in the samples from the tea gardens. We're tasting it and then spitting it. So.
Now, would those tea gardens be trying to promote their product the way they would at a winery by giving you the profile of it and what they think its attributes are and kind of persuading you that theirs would be better than somebody else's, or are they just kind of letting the product speak for itself?
The product speaks for itself. They send over the newly picked and processed leaf, send it to us and say, do you want to buy some of this? So there's tea auctions. Sometimes it's done by the tea gardens if you know the owners. That's rarer than buying it from a tea auction where there's a broker. And the broker will know what kind of teas your company sells. So he'll go through the market and pick up certain varieties and say, I've got this lot. Would you like to buy it? And you taste it and you go, yes or no. Mm. So then he'll try to sell to somebody else. But that's how the industry works, yes, is that there's the tea gardens, they produce it. Smaller ones sell it directly. Other ones sell it through the auctions.
Okay.
So the green tea, you'll notice the liquid is a little more green color than...
it is.
Yes, it is.
It is. And it's actually, I love the flavor of green tea. Although I can honestly say I don't drink it very much.
Yeah, I'll drink it once in a while.
Yeah. So this one has more vegetal taste to it. So you might consider it like eating some grass in a new grown field.
It does have a very grassy flavor.
You're right, it does.
Yeah, the Argentinian ones tend to be more along the Japanese line of grassy as opposed to asparagus or broccoli or something like that. So now we're not going to do all the other teas because...
That would take us into the 3 o'clock afternoon.
I'd have to come back for another 2 hours.
And we'd all be bouncing off the walls.
That's yeah, over-caffeinated. But after you process the green teas along the spectrum of oxidization, the longer you oxidize them, the closer they get to black tea.
Right.
So the next one would be oolongs. Oolongs are a very, very interesting tea from Fujian and now Taiwan, which was called Formosa in the old days, make the best ones of these oolongs. And what they do is they let them go a little bit longer in the oxidization process. So they have been rolled, and they have been broken, but now they're let to get darker. Okay. So an oolong tea will be much darker than a green tea, and often it's pellet-shaped or even eyebrow-shaped, where they'll roll it into a small leaf. So it's been much more hand-done. Like a good oolong tea is very expensive. It has a wonderful flavor. It's one of my favorite ones of the teas are the oolong teas. An orchid oolong from Taiwan. What happened was when the Portuguese kind of owned Formosa, which is now Taiwan, that island, they brought over a bunch of the tea masters from Fujian province, which is right across the water from this island. And those, so the people that are making oolong tea are descended from these masters from China. And they compete with each other to see who makes the best oolong tea.
So they would be using the same plant grown in a different location.
Camellia sinensis would be most likely used in most oolongs, and the terroir, the area, and the tea master's ability to make the tea special. And they'll have contests, and if somebody wins it, their tea is worth fortunes. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's the next step, and then the step after that's the one that we all know, which is black teas. The Earl Greys, the Lady Greys, the English breakfast, the Scottish breakfast, the Irish breakfast teas.
The orange pekoe.
Orange pekoe tea, or pekoe, as Northerners, Westerners call it, is the next category. So the black tea has gone all the way to full oxidization. So it is really dark by this point. The Chinese actually call it red tea. We call it black tea, but it really, if you look at the liquor, is more reddish than black.
It is, actually.
So, and different places that they source the black tea, like if it comes from Ceylon, which is the Isle of the Sri Lankan area, versus India, it has a different red and even a different, smoother flavor. And I actually never liked black teas until I got into the Tea Sommelier course. And then when I started tasting really good ones, the majority of tea I drink now is black teas. And I just find that they have so many nuances of flavor. And like I say, they can be doctored up with bergamot oils and different nuts and fruits and things to make them have all these different flavor profiles you see available to you in the shops, the bigger shops now.
Okay, so give us a little bit of history of tea.
Okay.
I mean, we've got to talk about the Boston Tea Party at one point.
That'd be interesting.
Yes. I'm going to get to a pu'er a little bit later, just because it's a whole separate category unto itself. And but the history of tea is very interesting. Of course, we go back to Shandong, as I mentioned at the beginning of this.
Right, which is
37 BC. Before Christ, or before Common Era now it's called. For some reason, somewhere when I was taught history, it was BC and AD.
Yes.
Now it's BC and CE, Common Era. I don't know when they changed this, but anyways, we'll keep it straight. And so it developed through the different dynasties. Originally, it was more medicinal, and but it went up through thousands of years of different uses of it. And they used to make more like the matcha, the powder, where they the early days they would grind it into powder and then they would whisk it and make it into kind of a very thin porgy type drink. And it was supposed to have all this medicinal benefits, which tea does, because it is nutritious. It's like a vitamin pill.
Yeah.
It evolved into the Song dynasty, which was the greatest era on earth, they sometimes say. The emperors were wonderful. The arts, the cultures were fabulous. The teapot, the use of loose leaf tea, everything started to. It was a golden age for tea, the Song dynasty. Then we had other ones. We had the Mongols came in. They kind of knocked off people, and then we have the Qing dynasty which was that was the Mongols. The earlier ones were Genghis Khan and these people. So every time there was a change of government, there was a change in the tea. Tea was important or tea was less important. You know? So, and the Mongols, of course, they lived up in the north area. And the tea trade up there was bricks of tea. To make they were much like the pu'er puck. They took the tea and they formed it into bricks. Because if you do that, the tea doesn't rot. Usually tea's good for about a year before it starts to lose its flavor and stuff. It doesn't go bad where you would get sick from it, but it just loses its flavor. It becomes a ghost. They say a ghost of itself.
Okay.
If you crush it into blocks, it'll last 3 years. So when they used to leave China, they used to go by camel and also backpacks, carriers up the Tea Horse Trail, they called it. And they'd be trading with Tibet and Mongolia and places like that. Tea was often the only vegetable product that these tribes along Tibet and Mongol ever got, because it's a cold, harsh climate. And so they loved the tea because it had vitamin C in it. And they would trade horses for tea, blocks of tea. It's called the Tea Horse Trail. The Chinese needed horses for their army. The Tibetans wanted the tea for their vitamins and minerals. But they used to put either mare milk or yak butter in their tea to flavor it, because these bricks of tea were not like the tea that we would drink. They're very, very strong. They're almost... Pu'er is like a nice version of a brick tea.
Really?
So anyways, that was...
It has to be pretty bad if you're going to sweeten it with yak oil.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they call it Tibetan butter tea. So it's an oily, buttery tea. I tried it once. And it's okay. Like, it's good, but... So the history of it, China evolved on through to just after the 1900s with the dynasties. And then the British kind of... it was first the Portuguese and the Dutch that traded into China, and they were not allowed only into a couple of ports. So they had to get the tea from the hinterland brought to the ports, and then they put it on their sailing ships, and it would take them 6-8 months, a year to get their tea back to the marketplace. And when it came into Europe, there was coffee houses at that time that were popular, and the tea didn't really fit, so they sold it in pharmacies as a medicine.
Oh, okay.
It was very, very expensive. Tea was somewhere between $300 and $3,000 today per.
Wow,
that is something.
So
yikes!
Only the rich. So the English were introduced to it by the Portuguese, who had got it out of China in their trade routes, and the Charles II, in around 1600 and something, married Catherine de Braganza.
De Braganza.
Yeah. She was Portuguese princess, and she came and married Charles II of England, and one of her dowries was a chest of tea. So the English aristocracy was introduced to tea back in the 1600s when it was just starting to come into Europe. And so she served it to the Royal Highness, and of course everybody wants what the royal wants.
Oh, definitely.
So even the spent tea leaves were gathered up by the maids and the butlers and serving people, and then reused or sold, because you could get a lot of money if it's $3,000 to $3,000 for a pound of tea.
Wow.
You know, depending on the tea, they could make a lot of money just off the spent tea leaves. People wanted to try it. So that was kind of the introduction of tea into Britain, and Britain becomes the powerhouse in tea, really, during the 1800s and 1900s. It just evolved. Started with the nobility. Smuggling became a huge problem because of most of the cost of the tea was a lot of it was taxes.
I think we're talking about gold and tea.
Marijuana or something. You know, like it was there was an underground economy that just brought tea and avoided the taxes. And this will bring us into the Americans and their tea tax. So, anyways, the British controlled this this tea trade through the British East India Company, which was Queen Elizabeth I had given a charter for the this East India Company, who then formed their own armies, and they basically stomped on the world economically.
Yes.
So this was Hail Britannia. It was the golden days of England was when the East India Company controlled most of the trade in the world at the time.
Right.
They had these ships that were big sailing ships, and they were really slow. Eventually, the Americans came up with a ship called the Clipper ship, which was a very thin racing ship. This was your Porsche of the, and they could bring tea from China in 3 months. So in about 99 days, they could get out of China and they could get this tea into Europe, which then brought the prices down, because now it doesn't take 6 months or 8 months for an old sailing ship to get this stuff into Europe. So this changed the accessibility of tea to the British people. So then we have a little movement called the teetotalers. I don't know if you ever heard of the temperance
I've heard of that,
movement. They were trying to get the British off their beer for breakfast. Because that's what they drank. Even kids drank beer for breakfast.
They did.
Because beer was healthy.
Drank beer all the time.
It was healthy. That water doesn't, once you brew into a beer or alcohol, it kills off the bacteria and the viruses and the choleras and plagues that were part of water.
Right.
So people drank these things because it was safe to drink. They wouldn't get sick from it. So the temperance movement pushed teetotalers. We only are total tea drinkers. So that was a movement in the 1800s that even more British people wanted tea because they wanted to give up the alcoholism, which was rampant in England with the gin and the beer. So that was a part of history as well. So the East India Company is bringing the tea in, bringing in faster. There's movements in the culture. Now, a Duchess of Bedford, Anna Duchess of Bedford, her husband was a Duke of Bedford, used to get faint in the afternoon. So what she asked her maids to do was, could you put me together some little snacks and a cup of tea so that I can get through the afternoon until supper time? Because supper time started getting later and later in Britain. So all of a sudden we have afternoon tea. She starts, her friends come over and she said, well, I'm going to have a little snack. Would you like a little snack? Pretty soon we have this whole afternoon thing where there's even clothing. Women's were in corsets and tight gowns. For a afternoon tea, they were allowed to socialize in loose garments, take off the corsets. It was women sitting around the porch or the table having cups of tea and little scones and sandwiches. So they became loose women. So the term loose women was women that didn't wear their corsets. It evolved into meaning other things. Yes, that's a term that came out of the tea parties.
Oh, okay.
And then so there's a mistake that's always done with afternoon teas now. An afternoon tea is a lighter tea. A high tea, some people call it high tea, isn't. A high tea was served on high tables in a peasant's cottage. And it was usually meat and potatoes and bread and some tea. So it was the working man's, he would get off at around 6 o'clock. He would work from 6 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night in the mines or in the factories, come home and he'd have his tea. And he sat at a big tall table like we have at some of the bars today. They've come back a little bit, the tables. Yes, and that would be called high tea. So high tea isn't the one with the fancy sandwiches, even though a lot of people mix that up. That's an afternoon tea or a low tea.
Okay.
So there's a low tea and a high tea.
Yes.
Okay.
High tea sort of gives you that lofty sort of a feeling when in fact it's more peasant-y, like going to the pub.
Yes.
Pub tea.
Pub tea, yes.
Yeah,
it's more like the plowman's lunch, like the cheese, the meat, and that kind of stuff. A heavier meal is your actually high tea. So, but anyways, the tea then is with the Anna Duchess of Bedford, her group of aristocrats are making it even more popular as a thing to do. So having tea parties became what the women would like to do in the afternoons with their friends. And it was a big thing. Social event, sending out invitations. If you didn't show up, it was really bad if you got invited by the Queen for her, tea party.
You wouldn't want to say no to the Queen.
No, short of getting hit by a carriage, you had to be at high tea.
Yes.
Which is not high tea, it's low tea, but okay.
And the Queen still has an annual tea party. I was in England working for the High Commission at the time that she was having, I was coming back to Canada, unfortunately, or I would have gone to it. I was invited to her tea party at Buckingham Palace.
Oh, wow.
And she has all the bureaucrats and dignitaries and ambassadors and all these people that are working, for international companies and that. To Buckingham Palace for this tea that she serves out in the gardens of Buckingham Palace, and she still does that to this day. There's the Buckingham Palace tea party. So tea parties became very entrenched in the British way of living. Tea is addictive. It's got caffeine. It's like coffee. It's an addictive quality. We'd all drink water if water wasn't addictive. Or water isn't addictive. So, we drink a lot of water. We try to drink a lot of water. We're told to drink a lot of water. But we really drink our water with things like the malt and hops is beer, or tea leaves with tea, or coffee beans with coffee, or soda pop has all, our water is always doctored up with something else because
of course,
water itself isn't addictive, and we tend to like the ones that have the stimulants in it. So we do, so people got addicted They might have been giving up their beer and their gin and stuff, but they were getting addicted to the caffeine in tea. So the British tea is mostly black because what happened is the Chinese cut off the British back in the 1830s.
Oh.
Because the British had nothing to trade to the Chinese. They had to trade them opium. Opium became a problem in China, so the emperor said, no, we don't want your opium anymore in trade for our tea. We want silver. The English were fighting battles. They were using up their silver to fight battles. They didn't have a lot left. They were using it all for tea. So they went in with their gunboat diplomacy and basically forced the emperor to give up some ports and his tea and trade with them and take opium in exchange for tea. So they had the Opium Wars that went on for about 60 years where the British had to keep going in and, basically throttling the Chinese into submission. Mm-hmm. And that really killed the Chinese tea culture. Because what happened is it was punishable by death to take tea leaves, tea plants, or tea seeds out of China. Wow. So people didn't risk it. But a guy named Robert Fortune, who had lived in China for quite a while and could pass as Chinese, dressed up like a coolie, snuck into the inner gardens of China and brought back out several thousand tea bushes.
Wow.
Now, they had tried this sneakily before, but on the sailing ships, because it took so long to get back to Europe, the tea plants died. So Robert Fortune came up with, he was a botanist, and he came up with this idea, if I put them in an aquarium-like enclosure,
right,
put a lid on them, they would self-water and they wouldn't be harmed by the sea air and all this type of stuff. So terrariums, he designed the terrarium, which he then put the tea plants in, sailed them over to Europe, and they looked for places where they could plant them. There's a tea garden in London, England. There's one in Cornwall. The gardens were mostly part of like botanist museums, the philosophers' gardens and stuff. But commercially, India was the place to start the tea business under the control of the British Raj, because the Brits under the East Indian Company had beaten out all the Rajas that were homegrown Indians and took over control of India. It was the jewel of the empire.
It was.
So in the empire, they started planting tea gardens. These teas are almost all black. The British by this time really liked their black teas. So Indian teas, the ones in the south from Nilgiri Mountains, Darjeelings, Brahmaputra River, the Assams, the heavier teas, all became Irish breakfast, Queen Mary's teas, and all the black teas that we are so familiar with.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then eventually, India became the biggest producer and China lost its trade. So China went downhill. Since the Opium Wars, China was kind of the underdog until Chairman Mao came along, turned it into communism, kind of rebuilt the Chinese empire, and now today we have capitalism there.
Right.
So China has
come
back. And tea comes from there very easily.
So what happened in the Boston Tea Party?
The Boston Tea Party was the American colonists
wanted tea.
They were shipping tea, and it was a big drink, like any British colony, to the Americans. But what was happening is George III was needing money for wars. So he was taxing all his colonies. He was taxing the British. They couldn't do anything about it because they lived under his rule. The colonies had... A lot of people had separated to the colonies because they were Quakers, or they were people that
under
were
religious persecution.
Persecution, second-class citizens. Australia, they were convicts. They had a different attitude towards the monarchy than did the British people who were true patriots.
Right.
They didn't like them. So they were saying, like, you got no right to tax us. You know, we're now a generation born in North America, in the United States, and we don't want any of your taxes to support your wars in Europe, against Bonaparte and people like that.
Okay.
So they said that the English passed the tea tax in 1773, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
And the British said, the colonists said, hey, we're Americans. We're not British. We're not paying this extra tax. So they went down to the ships, took all the tea, they dressed up like Mohican Indians, went down to the ships and threw the tea into the harbor, saying, stuff your tea. And they put out publicity saying nobody should serve tea anymore in the United States. So a lot of women converted over to coffee. So Oh, there's so much history to tea.
Oh, there is.
So the British got all upset, and they stopped these 3 tea ships. They lost their money on them because the tea was thrown away. The British decided that they were going to come to the colonies and beat those Americans, and we know about the American Revolution and how they beat the British, and now we have the United States of America, and it all is over a cup of tea.
And they still drink tea.
And they still the tea's coming back.
Well, that's all the time we have today on Fresh Waves. We've been talking with Jim Nicholson about tea. I'm your host, Bren Masson. If you'd like to hear this broadcast again, you can go to our YouTube page, Freshwaves Radio, and hear the broadcast again. Thanks for tuning in today. Have a great day, everyone.